Yields, I now recognize the gentlelady from Georgia, Ms. Greene, for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I get into some questions, I'd just like to point out that Mr. Wales, in your testimony, you talked about Iran's cyber hacking attempts against President Trump's campaign this past election cycle, aimed at undermining President Trump's candidacy and sowing discord within the United States electoral process. So thank you for pointing that out. While cyber threats from our foreign adversaries must absolutely be protected against, we also can't forget that our own independent cybersecurity agency, CISA, was more focused on conducting its own large-scale election interference campaign through its censorship laundering complex against our own people, rather than bolstering our cybersecurity efforts and working to protect our critical infrastructure. Just some brief stats. The average cost of a data breach in the U.S. amounts to $9.36 million, almost double that of the global average. As you, Mr. Montgomery, testified, the FBI received reports of $12.5 billion in cybercrime losses in the United States in 2023, an increase of nearly 20% over 2022, which is definitely alarming. Ransomware attacks rose 74% from 2022 to 2023. Cyber attacks on critical infrastructure globally increased 30% in 2023. 1 in 3 Americans, and this is shocking, were affected by healthcare data breaches last year. Government agencies were the 3rd most targeted sector from ransomware attacks in 2023, and there are roughly 500,000 vacant cybersecurity jobs in the United States, Mr. Chairman. That is a serious issue. Most cyber attacks fall into a never-ending pattern. A threat actor, often sponsored by a nation state, exploits vulnerabilities in the system. They exfiltrate sensitive data or encrypt it for ransom. Then there is an investigation into how it happened, who was involved, and what measures should be taken to prevent it from happening again. And then it happens again and the cycle repeats, and we're all in a very serious dilemma. Mr. Montgomery, in your testimony, you talk about some specific offensive and defensive solutions that we can take to address the needs of our cybersecurity shortfalls. Could you elaborate a little more on that, please?
Sure, thank you. I would highlight in that first, we absolutely have to invest in our sector risk management agencies to make sure they're doing their job. It's shocking sometimes when you look at a Department of Energy spends what I think is probably the right amount, somewhere between $50 and $100 million a year on being a sector risk management agency, helping energy companies protect themselves. Then you go to the Department of Agriculture and they're spending $500,000, or Department of Education, they're spending $250,000. Most of us understand that's 2 full-time equivalents or 1 full-time, it's 1 human or 2 humans. And that's just website management. You're not helping the 8,000 farms and food distribution networks out there with 1 person manning a website. And you're not helping our K through 9,000 districts out there with 1 person manning a website. We need more consistent focus, leadership from the top down, cabinet members down, on cybersecurity as a responsibility they have as a cabinet member. And then when appropriate, the funding to do that kind of thing. So to me, that's the number one. And I spoke earlier about military mobility. If I could only focus on 3 things, it would be rail, aviation, and ports. Because if we don't get that right, China, Russia, doesn't matter. If they initiate combat operations that we're going to be involved in, we won't get there fast enough.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Montgomery. I completely agree with you. Those are very critical infrastructure things that we have to protect. With AI being the biggest emerging industry in the technology industry, I'd like to ask each of you, how can we protect Americans, protect our government, protect ourselves from cyber attacks, and how do you see AI playing a role in that, maybe for the good or for the bad?
I'll start. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Myers.
Artificial intelligence can be one of the solutions to a lot of the problems that you highlighted. When we think about the cyber workforce, artificial intelligence can take more junior analysts and make them more senior analysts by automating and helping them deal with complex problems at scale and at speed. I'll also say that artificial intelligence in the security domain can be used to identify and quickly remediate these attacks. So there is a huge opportunity there. The one caution I'll say is that I think in the next 1 to 3 years, we'll be seeing more and more organizations and businesses employing their own artificial intelligence. And that will create a situation where there's what we would call AI workloads that need to be protected. So we need to be thinking about how can we proactively start talking about protecting those AI workloads today before they become a problem in the future.
That makes sense. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, can we allow our witnesses to each answer?
Very quickly, a yes, no, but that we need to move on. So if you've got a quick yes, no, you can do a quick yes, no.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming to the committee today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
The gentlelady